You're listening to Skeptoid. I'm Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com. The Pentagon and the Missile. Today we're going to delve once again into the depths of conspiracy theories. We'll take yet another look at the events of the September 11 attacks, this time focusing on the Pentagon, the headquarters of the U.S. Department of Defense in Arlington, Virginia. According to the generally accepted account of what was witnessed and recorded on September 11, 2001, the Pentagon was struck by American Airlines Flight 77, a hijacked Boeing 757 on its way from Dulles to Los Angeles. 59 people on board the airplane, plus 125 workers inside the Pentagon, were killed, plus the 5 hijackers. And as pop culture would inevitably have it, alternate claims have arisen, mainly that the Pentagon was not hit by a hijacked plane at all, but by an American cruise missile fired as a false flag operation. Years later, is there sufficient reason to doubt the official story? First of all, the phrase "official story" has become problematic. All it really refers to is the generally accepted explanation or definition. For example, the official story is that the human body has 206 bones. The official story is that an atom of radon contains 86 protons. The official story is that Hiroshima was destroyed by the little boy atomic bomb in 1945. Just by referring to any observation or result as the, quote, official story, it makes it seem to be shrouded in doubt or tainted by political corruption. Thus, virtually all websites promoting an alternative version of the September 11 attacks will start by dismissing all observations and evidence as the, quote, official story. In this sense, official story is what we call a weasel word, terminology intended to communicate something other than what the words actually mean. In the strict sense, the official story is the one that's most authoritative and best supported. But in common usage, it's only employed when the intent is to cast doubt. And casting doubt seems to be the strongest reason to believe that it was a missile and not an airliner. There are mountains of evidence confirming what so many people witnessed on that day, evidence that's all rock solid and has no real flaws. This is the case with a lot of conspiracy theories, yet it never detracts from the popularity of the conspiracy theory. It's not possible in one show to cover all the many objections raised to the official story, but we will look at a handful that are representative of the whole. With the exception of a couple claims that are simply factually wrong, each specific objection is based simply on the possibility that some observation might be consistent with an alternate version of events. Unfortunately, consistent with is not evidence of. Let's look at the most popular such example. Myth number 1. The security video shows a missile hitting the building. Of the 85 videotapes seized by the FBI that may have shown the plane strike the building, only one actually shows the impact of an object with the building. This is a Pentagon security camera pointed at a traffic gate along an access driveway. In the background is a white streak, visible in only a single frame, which is far too small and of low quality to make out any useful details. Missile theorists believe the depicted object is too small to be a 757, and is more consistent with a cruise missile. But so far as the object in the video appearing too small for a 757, that's correct, it is. But this is to be expected, since the lens of the security camera is ultra-wide angle. The camera was intended to see as much of the vehicle driveway where it was positioned as possible, side to side. Thus it did not produce a rectilinear image with straight lines. The lines on the Pentagon building are clearly curved in the video. Yet missile theorists have superimposed straight lines of perspective onto this image, in an effort to show that the height of the incoming object was too small for a 757. Because of the lens used, the plane does in fact appear far smaller than it would with a normal lens, consistent with what we'd expect of an ultra-wide-angle lens and a full-sized airliner. Myth number 2. Donald Rumsfeld's office was on the opposite end of the building. The implication being that Rumsfeld, presumed architect of the false flag attack, was carefully protected by having the plane hit a faraway part of the building. This is a perfect example of consistent with, not being evidence of. Sure, if Rumsfeld had masterminded the attack, he might well choose to preserve his own office. But by this same logic, you could point to anyone, anywhere in the world, whose office was not in the immediate vicinity of the crash site. This factoid is so irrelevant that I didn't even bother to look up where in the Pentagon Rumsfeld's office was. Whether it's true or not, it's useless information. Now for an example of a claim that's just simply wrong. Myth number 3. There was no debris from an airplane at the site. Thus, there was no plane, thus it must have been a missile, even though that in itself is fallacious logic. Even after so many years have gone by, I still hear this assertion being made, in blatant defiance of virtually every photograph taken that day. Debris from the plane was everywhere, including easily identified mechanical parts from the landing gear and engines, and lots of twisted aluminum painted in Boeing BAC 452 green epoxy primer. It's trivial to do a Google image search for Flight 77 debris to see exactly what was reported by dozens of Pentagon employees, rescue personnel, and reporters, and observed live worldwide by millions of television viewers. It's also easy to read the transcript from the air traffic controllers who communicated with the plane, and to see the graphs from the flight data recorder, including the plane's altitude as it plummeted toward the Pentagon. Both are among the information available from the National Transportation and Safety Board, but I should be clear that pointing out such evidence, especially in the case of official documents, is not persuasive to a conspiracy theorist. In their theory, evidence consistent with, quote, the official story is simply part of the conspiracy and is therefore unreliable and should be dismissed. Myth number 4. The approach path was impossible for a 757. When the hijackers brought the plane to the Pentagon, they were still too high, so they flew in a circle to drop the altitude. A Dulles air traffic controller, Danielle O'Brien, said, "You don't fly a 757 in that manner. It's unsafe." Conspiracy theorists often cite this comment as evidence that the controllers knew it was not a 757. But this interpretation is only possible if you ignore the rest of what she said. O'Brien has been very clear that there's no question it was the 757, and that unsafe doesn't mean impossible. It was never the intent of the hijacker to safely land American Flight 77 anywhere, she said, and also correctly pointed out that unlike an airliner, a missile does not need to circle to lose altitude. Myth number 5. The Pentagon's missile defenses would have shot down an actual encroaching aircraft. As the headquarters of the Department of Defense, you'd expect the Pentagon to be one of the best defended buildings in the world. But apparently, this alleged missile defense system is non-existent. It was proposed by French conspiracy theory journalist Thierry Masson in his book 9/11: The Big Lie. If such a defense system existed, but was not used, not a single Pentagon employee complained about it. Even the friends of the 125 employees killed raised no objection. In practice, it would be very difficult for the Pentagon to have such a system. The Pentagon's location was fixed in 1941, just weeks after the completion of what's now Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport. Planes landing at the airport fly right over the Pentagon all day long, at a very low altitude. The ends of runways 33 and 15 are 1 kilometer from the Pentagon, in a direct line. Planners of such a theoretical missile defense system would have known that they'd have essentially no time to discriminate between normal traffic and hostile traffic, and to make a kill, no-kill decision. Thus, it's not surprising that none of the hundreds of thousands of photographs and videos of the Pentagon show a missile defense system, nor do the blueprints nor construction photographs, nor has anyone who has ever worked there reported knowledge of such a thing. That's a really quick overview of only 5 of the many arguments made by the missile theorists. Apologies to those who are looking for a more in-depth analysis of all the many facets to this conspiracy theory. But there really is not sufficient evidence of a conspiracy to warrant much time or investigation. It's intellectually lazy to simply hunt for anomalies that might be seen as consistent with proving the official story wrong. That's the opposite of a responsible search for information and knowledge. If you want to know what happened on September 11th, look at the evidence. Certainly, you do want to pursue alternative explanations for the evidence, but you also want to make sure you're not changing the evidence to support your predetermined conclusion. I want to encourage everyone to approach with great caution any alternative belief system that is founded primarily upon the assumption that accepted theory is wrong. In such a system, any alternative theory is acceptable, so long as it denies accepted theory. A familiar example of this is creationism. There are many different, mutually irreconcilable versions of both old Earth and young Earth creationism. Gap creationism, theistic evolution, day-age creationism, omphalism, and so on. No two of them can be true, as they all represent radically different versions of history. But despite these profound differences, they're all allied with one another under the single banner of evolution is wrong. Competing theories are generally welcomed as long as they embrace the assumption that accepted theory is wrong. This is equally true of 9/11 conspiracy theories. Consider the number of theories that have been put forth to explain the collapse of the World Trade Center. Everything from holographic airliners to controlled demolition to robotic airplanes rigged with explosives. You name it, any theory is viable, so long as it starts with the assumption that American Airlines Flight 11 and United Airlines Flight 175 did not actually crash into the Twin Towers. So keep a sharp eye on the motivations for your beliefs and theories. If you want to find out what's known, look to see what the evidence supports. But if you find instead that you're looking for only that which supports a specific belief or claim, be aware that you're doing things backwards. Hold the official story to a high standard, but don't simply be hostile to our existing knowledge base. Got a minute? Give Skeptoid 2 and 2. Share an episode with 2 friends, and spend 2 minutes to write a review on iTunes or the website of your choice. You're listening to Skeptoid, a listener-supported program. I'm Brian Dunning from Skeptoid.com.